2015 to 2017 Moto Guzzi Griso 8V SE. Moto Guzzi has been in the game since 1921, which is a success in itself by anyone's reckoning. Our friends over in Mando del Lario, Italy, have produced many different bikes over the years, but none of them are quite like the Griso 8V SE. Lean and low with a curvaceous flow, the Griso is not exactly what you would call a typical MG. The overall look of this ride is unique. As with most MGV twins, the engine is the dominant design feature, but the rest of the bike just sets the stage for the star of the show. The result is a bare bike that favors the all-up-front look most commonly associated with race bikes and street fighters. Continue reading for my review of the Moto Guzzi Griso. The factory shunned its usual blocky look with abrupt changes to the lines in favor of sexy smooth and curvy lines that suggest a continuity of flow, and the result is a teardrop-shaped bullet that looks fast even standing still. A compact and comfortable rider triangle puts the rider in a slightly aggressive, forward-leaning position that is perfect for offsetting acceleration forces and wind pressure on your upper body. Minimal fenders and a single-sided swing arm leave an unimpeded view of the classic-looking laced wheels and the big front brake discs, and the overall look is fairly uncluttered and clean. MG built the Griso for the fiery-eyed peg draggers among us. Designed for torsional rigidity, the frame keeps the center of gravity low. While the steering head angle is only set at 26.3 degrees, the offset steering brings the total steering angle to 34 degrees to provide an overall wheelbase of 60.78 inches with 4.25 inches of rake. This makes for an agile ride that responds well to handlebar pressure, and it can make decisive reversals when tackling particularly bendy roads. The hollow swing arm serves as not only part of the chassis, but the drivetrain as well. Housed within the swing arm is the drive shaft, using the Cardano Reattivo Computo (CARC) system. Gone are the days of the rear end popping up and down in response to throttle changes. The CARC system transfers rear wheel torque to the frame while preventing it from jacking up the bike. The result is better behavior when changing the throttle in corners, and more consistent handling across the board. Rear suspension is handled by a Bosch progressive suspension, and it has adjustable preload, compression and rebound settings so you can dial the bike in for varying loads and conditions. Stiff 43mm inverted front forks stabilize the front, and they also have adjustable compression and rebound features as well. Brembo brakes work with wave brake discs that dissipate waste heat more efficiently than traditional round rotors. The factory chose the 1151cc quattro-valve engine, which represents the pinnacle, so far, of its transverse V-twin development, to serve as the beating heart for the Griso. MG touts this engine as the most powerful it has ever built. The engine produces a generous 110 horsepower at 7,500 revolutions per minute and 80 pound-feet of torque at 6,400 revolutions per minute, plenty of power that can push the bike close to the 150 miles per hour mark. Unfortunately, a considerable amount of hand-numbing engine vibration is transferred to the rider through the frame, which will result in increased fatigue over long trips. A pair of 50mm throttle bodies manages fuel delivery through Marelli IWP 189 injectors. The valve train uses a 4-valve head with a single overhead cam to allow the engine to breathe, and the valve springs have a conical cross-section to prevent valve float at high RPM. A 2-into-1 header system channels the exhaust away from the engine and terminates in a very unusual-looking asymmetrical muffler. A 6-speed transmission quietly sends the engine power to the rear wheel via the single-plate clutch and the CARC drive shaft within the swing arm. The Griso is priced to move at $12,999, which puts it within reach of most customers looking for a good around-town bike, as long as you like Griso Trophy, which is the only color scheme MG is offering on this ride. At a glance, the Griso profile immediately brings to mind a bike from Honda that is recently returned to the US market, the CB1100X. Yeah, They are plenty different to be sure, but I submit they are much the same bike, just from dissimilar eras. A lone headlight can and paired instrument cluster lead the way over a cut-down front fender, and the Griso brings the look up to date with fully adjustable, inverted front forks and monoshock. Credit where it's due, Honda gets props for at least providing an adjustable preload function on the CB1100, but that's not quite as slick as the whole Trinity. Guzzi packs on more breakage with big, 320mm discs up front over the 296mm Honda discs, but if you want that ABS protection, Honda has the only game in town. Looks-wise, it comes down to personal taste, but for me, Honda gets the vote for its classic style and retro appeal. They really did a good job capturing the essence of the era. The engine layout is obviously a big factor here. Guzzi runs its typical, transverse mount V-twin, while the Red Rider also went transverse, but with an inline-4 powerplant. At 1,151 cc, the Griso barely tops the 1,140 cc CB in displacement, but the Guzzi outpunches the competition with 109 horsepower and 81 pound-feet of torque versus 82.5 horsepower and 64.7 pounds of grunt from the CB. Having said that, performance from the Honda is good enough, and I'd sacrifice that much for the classic vibe I get from the CB1100. Good-looking bike, and definitely better looking, in my humble opinion, than the usual MG style. I must confess a slight prejudice against the transverse engine design. If I lay my bike down, I will scratch some cases up, but I worry what kind of damage will occur if I went down for a slide on the cylinder heads. Methinks nothing good can come of that, and the slide will end in expensive tears. My wife and fellow writer, Alan Hinton, says, "My husband, always the pragmatist, thinks about what happens if things go wrong. I like to think about things going right." Griso was a character in the betrothed, original Italian, I Promessi Sposi, by Alessandro Manzoni, an Italian poet and novelist. The Griso of literature was a tough and fearless leader who, according to Manzoni, naturally undertook all the most daring enterprises. Is it brash or fitting that Moto Guzzi gave the bike his name, especially after modifying and redeveloping the majority of the 1200cc engine to increase power and torque to respectable levels?